Good afternoon. Call the meeting to order on this March 10th. The City of Belleville acknowledges we are meeting today on traditional territory of many nations. We recognize the historical relationship between Indigenous peoples to this land and acknowledge our shared obligation to respect, honor, and sustain these lands and natural resources contained with them. We recognize all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit who call Belleville their home and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship with them. We look forward to fostering a path towards reconciliation and show respect for the Indigenous peoples who first live and currently live on this land where we now all reside together. I will call the meeting to order. We are all present. Please remain standing for a reflection from City Clerk Doug Irwin.
May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Help us to be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chambers minds that think and hearts that feel, always having respect for others, so that we may serve the people of our city in a helpful manner and for the good of all.
Please be seated. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none, I need a motion for the minutes of the council meeting held on February 24th, 25th, special council meeting held on February 20th and 26th, 25 be approved. Moved by Councillor Enright Miller, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Discussion. All in favor? Carried. We move to deputations. Mark Kirkpatrick, President of CEO of Loyalist College, is here. Mark, you're here. Thank you. How's our favorite college? Well, I guess you're going to tell us now. So
I'm going to tell you now,
yeah,
yes.
So.
Okay. Okay. So there's been, so thank you for your time today. There's been an awful lot of information about what's happening in the Loyalist College and the challenges that we're facing. And although I'll provide some context into some of them, I want to bring awareness to what it could mean to this community and the surrounding region as Loyalist contracts among these massive cutbacks. Just a bit of background first. From the act that created and to this day defines colleges and our mandates, and I want to emphasize at the bottom where it says that we're mandated to support the economic and social development of our local communities and our local and diverse communities. And that is actually what I think is under concern right now for me. Here's another slide that I use that's fundamental to who we are, and I think it's just important to let you know what it's about. And so what it means is, just because Loyalist College is in a region that is made up of smaller towns and villages and hamlets, it does not mean that the people and businesses of our region deserve less for their post-secondary system than those in larger Ontario cities. This has traditionally been a challenge as smaller rural colleges cost more to operate, and of late we have been making great strides to close that gap. However, what you are seeing now in small-town rural Eastern Ontario is a severe reduction in the post-secondary programming and thereby affordable access to post-secondary education for rural Ontario. Although we're cutting 30% of our programming, because our home campus is local, we are maintaining more local access than many areas of similar size in the province. There we go. Oh, not getting this. Help is on the way. That? Yeah, okay. So very quickly, some background about how we got here. So the IRCC, or Immigration, Refugees and Citizens Canada, put in place caps on the number of international students allowed into the country. They split those across the provinces, and then the provinces split those across the institutions. The reasons behind the reductions were housing and pressures on healthcare. However, the real damage by the federal government was reputational, where they spoke very poorly about the Canadian post-secondary system and that we no longer welcome international students. So the caps no longer matter. And this could take years to fix. But I do want to take 1 minute to state that international students are far more than the financial support they contribute to the college sector. They have made the learning environment better. They have contributed to our region by working hard and volunteering within our community while in school. And when they graduate, many stay in our region. They have created new businesses. They feel the needed skills labor, and they've added to the cultural fiber of a region and so much more. The loss of international student revenue that subsidized our operations for decades brought to light the decades-long underfunding of the Ontario college system. For every dollar the rest of Canada spends on post-secondary, Ontario spends 44 cents. Simply stated, colleges have two revenue sources for domestic students. Grant, which has been frozen for a decade and nominally increased the decade prior, and that, by the way, is not per student, and tuition, which was cut by 10% in 2019 and frozen at 2015 levels. So essentially, colleges are running on 2015 revenue streams and supporting more students with that funding. We are a very efficient system. However, on its own, this funding, without subsidization, does not support the delivery of domestic programming. Both the Provincial Auditor General and the Provincial Blue Ribbon Panel noted these risks to the Ontario college system and the overdependence on international revenue, and recognized the greater risk to Ontario's rural colleges, where the cost of delivery in less populated areas of the province is significantly higher. This graph shows just how far behind Ontario is from the rest of Canada on post-secondary funding. Ontario is roughly half of the second worst funded province, Quebec, and about a third of Saskatchewan. As we start what could be a trade war with the United States, Ontario is quickly becoming horribly positioned to develop and retain a workforce needed to be competitive and productive. In actual fact, we are contracting on that ability, especially in our region of the province. What we're facing at Loyalist, we're starting looking at a $40 million reduction in tuition revenue for fiscal 25-26, and more of the following fiscals. This is not a one-time loss, but is annualized going forward. This revenue historically covered our capital, covered the upfront costs for new programming. We could not bring on a mechatronics or medical radiation technology program otherwise. As an FYI, MRT cost about $2.5 million to launch. It's upgraded lab equipment and classrooms, subsidized the cost of delivery of domestic programming to ensure our region had access to a variety of programs. This revenue has allowed Loyalists to give our region access to a large number of programs, update our labs and facilities that are used by numerous members of our community. As I said, our region deserves the same level of facility as those in larger communities. What this has meant in our response has been really gut-wrenching. We've had to announce the reduction of 30% of our post-secondary programming, a 20% reduction in our workforce, the closure of our Toronto campus, no new capital, and austerity measures have been put in place on all of their expenses. Loyalist College is a community college, and our tentacles within the community run wide and deep. Unfortunately, this means that it is not just Loyalists that will be feeling the pain of these cuts. Loyalist has been a huge net immigration engine for young people into both international and domestic to our region. With an aging population, we need to bring young people into our region to work, to contribute to the economy, and to drive growth. Demographics show we need to get younger, and Loyalist has been making that happen. Unfortunately, in the coming years, that will be much less. We are suspending programs that our workforce needs, simply because we can no longer afford to run them. Remember back when I stated that I said that the federal government made this immigration change because of housing and healthcare. If you follow the dots from then to what you're seeing now at Loyalist and colleges across the province, programs that created skilled workers that build houses are being cut. And many students that enter programs like PSW are international students. With an expected reduction of 1,000 to 1,500 international students for the fall of 2025, will result in a massive drop in the available of part-time labor that supports the local service and manufacturing sectors. When they would have graduated, they would have filled the positions in the full-time workforce and become new business leaders that support longer-term economic growth for this region. Now there will be much fewer of them. Loyalist staff and students contribute directly to the local economy through housing, spending on local business support. So staffing reductions combined with a decline in enrollment and programming means less economic activity, fewer jobs, and reduced municipal revenue. Transit ridership will drastically drop with a corresponding drop in revenue. Estimated losses, about $9 million annually, non-tuition related spend from international students in our region on housing and food and entertainment. Lost wages from the from those working at Loyalist will be between $16 and $18 million annually, and that is lost purchasing power. Lost revenue to those businesses that directly or indirectly partner with Loyalist for everything from construction to the multitude of services that we purchase locally every year will also be impacted. Loyalist spends upwards of $250,000 annually supporting regional festivals, events, and sporting activities. We will no longer be able to do that. I fear the impact this may have on the sustainability of some of these initiatives, as Loyalist has been the largest sponsor for many. Over the years, we have pulled significant permits from the city, averaging close to $150,000 a year. This has stopped as there's no more construction. The economic impact from the cuts go deep and they go wide, as Loyalist is so integrated into the region, economy, and social fabric. We project the impact of this one announcement to result in a 1% reduction in the gross regional product. One critical item is Loyalist is a strong partner with QEDC, as we work very closely in both attracting and retaining business. Necessary cuts will limit the availability to support this work. The workforce new businesses may be looking for may no longer be in our region. Lastly, I just want to say I understand the desire to keep tuition low and to make it affordable to taxpayers. However, this is quickly becoming a benefit to those that live in larger cities only. These locations will have a variety of programming for their youth to take locally. Look at what has happened in Perth, Lindsay, Brockville, and Cornwall, with these smaller locations now offering only a handful of programs. Rural Eastern Ontario applicants to college may be looking at a 400% increase in educational costs, as they'll have to leave town to do so. We also know that when the youth leave home, it is really hard to get them to move back. The other option, and the one that most concerning to me, is that post-secondary education will no longer be affordable for many in our region, because even attending a local college is a fiscal challenge. Keeping tuition frozen is quickly becoming a benefit only for those in large metropolitan areas. This only amplifies the urban-rural disparities that exist today. I just want to thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Chatton?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. President Kirkpatrick, I've watched you tirelessly advocate for Loyalist College and for the benefit of students in our community. I am a proud graduate of Loyalist College once upon a time, and quite frankly, I am really shocked to hear the illustration that you've given of how much this is going to impact the city of Belleville across the board. If there was an ask that you had for the city to support you, what is it? What is it that we can do?
I think it's a voice. That's what I keep asking everybody I meet with, is the more voices that speak up on behalf of the institution to Queen's Park and into the PMO's office, the better, because that's where the changes have to be made.
I can make that commitment to you. I will write a letter myself to anyone who can make that kind of change and perhaps propel that forward. Thank you for your deputation today.
Thank you.
Councillor Millette, then Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Kirkpatrick, thank you so much for coming. And as my colleague, I'm a proud graduate of the community college system myself, Sheridan College in my case, and that sound you hear is, that whirring sound you hear right now is Bill Davis spinning in his grave, the architect of the community college system in Ontario. I've heard your pleas in the past, and I agree. I will advocate on behalf of the college as well. I have one direct question for you today, Mark. As a member of the city's library committee, I know how important it is to have a librarian. I understand, and I've heard through our work at the library here that we've parted ways with our librarian at the college. How does one operate a library without a librarian?
Well, fortunately for us, the college system is very integrated, so there's a centralized librarian function that we can have, so we can still manage it through OCLS, Ontario College's Library Service. So we're going to keep our library. We kept many of the staff that function as the library, and you know, it's one of the many cuts that we didn't want to make. but unfortunately, we are having to reduce staff that will reduce service levels in many, many areas.
Well, I think it just illustrates just how grim the situation is.
It
Is that we have a library without a librarian.
Yep.
And I'm sure in other departments, we have heads of departments that are no longer employed and departments that have vanished altogether.
There's a significant a number of people who no longer work at the college already.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for coming. One question. When the cuts come to all the colleges, does the colleges work together to try to formulate that one college, I'm thinking of duplication maybe, and maybe I'm wrong, but like Loyalist put on one program, Sheridan put on another, so that you have a full slate of students and you don't have to, you may lose a couple, but somebody else college will. So I'm wondering if the colleges work together to combat some of that duplication.
We work together on a whole number of fronts. We don't really focus in too much on programming because, as I said at the very start, one of the mandates of the college system, the community college system, is to provide access locally to as many programs as possible. So yes, we do look at what's going on in the province. So let's say Program X is offered at 10 other colleges, we would not offer Program X because it just becomes redundant and we can't get enough students to come in and support that program. But if we can offer Program Y, even if it's offered in 2 or 3 other locations, and know that we can fill that out, and it's aligned with the workforce needs of our region, then we'll still run the program. So there's a little bit of conversation, but really we're designed to be community colleges and support our communities, not the province as a whole.
Yeah, and I can appreciate your community colleges. I was just wondering if there was any cost saving or in that kind of a system where you work more with the different colleges. And if it's not, then that's fine.
You're right, there would be a cost savings, but the challenge you get into, and this is why I was talking about what's happening at other institutions. So if you look at like Perth has now closed their campus because they've done that. Brockville, I think, has 5 programs left. Cornwall's just over 10 programs left, which is about the size of Quinn West. Lindsay, we all know, got last fall got really reduced in programs. So what happens is, if you pull all these things back to the large metropolitan areas, the places that get impacted the most are places like Belleville and Quinn West, because they'll end up with a small handful of programs, because the demand is always in the larger metropolitan areas. So you can, but the question is, do you want to?
Yeah, and I appreciate more or less, I was just inquiring if you look at that feasibility, because as everything's going on today, cost is going up and everything, and we want the students to get what they want as economically as they can, and if it's community colleges. But you've answered my question, you are looking at that.
Yeah, we do.
And I will make a motion at the end about Belleville sending a letter to the Member of Parliament supporting Loyalist College.
Councillor Kelly?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Kirkpatrick, for the presentation today, and you touched on a lot of things, and as Councillor Millette mentioned in his comments, that we've all been following this over the last several months in the news, and kind of sitting back, and as Councillor Millette said, we're here to help, and I'm a graduate of Loyalist College a few years ago. I think I was on the honor roll, so fond memories of the college. So, you touched on today, and I've read it a few times, $40 million international revenue loss, 20% staff, 30% in programs, and you're part of the Economic Development Committee for the City of Belleville, and you and I had a brief conversation before the meeting today, just the economic impact. And I think it's sad on what's happening in post-secondary education. These are my thoughts on this. I see Loyalist College as a true partner for the City of Belleville. It's more than just a strong, successful education institution and what they deliver there for the students. You can drive by in the spring and summer and you'll see soccer, football. I can't tell you how many Relay for Life events I've attended at Loyalist College. Grassroots stuff for communities. Indigenous celebrations at Loyalist. Your community leaders, motorcycle program in the summertime, you go by there, it's always something going on. And I've had lots of relatives and friends' kids have come to school here in Belleville and got educated and moved on, and some have stayed, and as you touched on, work in the area. I think it's appalling that what's happening, and the cost, the dependency for post-secondary on international student revenue. My son attended University of Toronto. His tuition was about $11,000. An international student at the University of Toronto a few years ago was $65,000. And to me, it's to sustain what they were trying to do. The educational institutions had to charge that astronomical, some would say, fee.
Yeah.
So I'm in, like everybody else on this team, to continue to work with the provincial government and have our voice heard, hopefully.
Councillor Kelly, do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to offer some thoughts, because to me this is a serious impact to our community. What's happening? I was in Bancroft yesterday, and I drove by Loyalist College Bancroft campus. What is happening there? Because again, that's another rural community that depends on post-secondary, and they can still work and play and learn in their community. What's happening to that institution there?
So we're not changing anything. We're a community college, which means we need to have our roots in the community, and we need to support places throughout this, all the 4 counties that we support. So we're not going anywhere from Bancroft. We're actually trying to look at some new initiatives, community supporting community education initiatives that hopefully will allow us to do a little bit more out there. It's not going to make any money. It's like a break-even kind of thing, but it's what we're supposed to do. And so we're going to continue to push out those initiatives and support the north of Hastings. And just as an FYI, just so if everybody doesn't know, the cost of tuition for college these days is just over $2,700 a year.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Carr?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick, for coming and for your leadership and your voice to, I know you've been to several councils. I've actually watched your presentation at Quinn West to prepare. So I do have a few questions. One that I want to ask, having listened to your presentation today, though, was that you mentioned you were eliminating programs related to skilled trades for house building. Did I hear that correctly? And
carpentry, second-year carpentry has been suspended.
Yeah.
And architecture has been suspended. Construction, some of the manufacturing programs have been suspended.
And those programs couldn't be salvaged and others looked at, given the need for house building as being one of the primary focuses, I guess, of all 3 levels of government and needs across our communities? So
we did keep the first-year carpentry.
Okay.
The second year isn't feasible to continue to run, partly because they job out. So the enrollment's very low. But anything this is the dilemma of a smaller college, is we still have the same expense. The consumables are really expensive. All the equipment is really expensive to get it up and running and keep it going. We can't drive the number of students through it to get that economy of scale that makes it affordable to continue to run. And so it's not just us. I think if you go down the road to St. Lawrence, you'll see that they probably closed a whole bunch of them as well. Fleming closed a whole bunch as well. They're just very challenging to run efficiently. And so, yes, we went through a process. There are some that we had really struggled to say we're going to keep them running or not. It's hard.
Yeah, no, I read the news articles, and yes, I can imagine it was a painstaking process.
Yeah.
In your presentation, you highlight 2 issues.
Yeah.
You highlight the fact that funding has been frozen for some time with the provincial government, but then you've also talked about the recent federal government reforms on international students. Of those 2 issues, what is the greater issue?
I think they're kind of co-equal, because the only way that the Ontario funding model works is if there's another revenue source to cross-subsidize everything. So you either can fix the provincial one and not have to worry about the international students, or you figure out how to get more international students to come in to cross-subsidize. I'm not saying that was the most efficient way or the best way to cross-subsidize the college system, but it was the way that we had, that was the tool that we had to create that revenue stream to make up for the domestic one. So it's either one or the other has to change, and what we are trying to do is develop new revenue models that hopefully will create some extra revenue for the college to again, do that cross-subsidization. But it takes time.
Okay, and then just in terms of some of the lobbying that's been done, I'm assuming that you as an individual college, as well as a group of colleges, have lobbied the provincial government, not just now because of the consequences of the federal reforms, but simply because you've been running with less revenue from the provincial government for a decade at least. So those lobbying efforts
They've been
have
going on for
continued.
years.
And what does the province say that you could share with us in terms of the response? And were they just simply satisfied with the fact that international students could be a Band-Aid solution so they don't have to step up?
I can't tell you what they think because I honestly don't know.
I said what they have said.
Yeah.
Sorry, through you.
Sorry, no, I just,
Yeah, no.
they don't say a lot. I mean, the one
Okay.
thing that they did do is that last year they created something called the Blue Ribbon Panel, which was, they selected a group of people to look at post-secondary education and the funding models. They made a series of recommendations that came back to the province, of which they did not act on. And one of them was to address the funding challenges for domestic students, to reduce the reliance on international students.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, and I know there's obviously changes occurring, but up until now, what was your student population in terms of local students, domestic students, and international students?
So locally here, we have been just over 4,000 students. And we've never been more than 50% international, so we've always been mostly domestic campus here. We had another 300 in Port Hope, and then we had another 3,200 in Toronto.
Okay, and
And they were all international in Toronto.
And the Toronto campus there, was a lot of that revenue being able to divert down to your Belleville campus?
Yeah, so it's called a PCPP. So it was designed, and one of the mandates when you created one was that you're supposed to take the revenue there and invest in your local community. And so when you look at all the renovations that we've been doing over the last bunch of years, that's the money that we've been using to make all the difference on the campus and doing all the capital improvements has been primarily the revenue from the PCPP.
Okay, and then just in terms of, so you gave me the composition of your student population. How many residences do you have on campus, and then how are they filled out? And I'm asking this question in the context of, I've heard some post-secondary institutions typically offer it the first year as they get settled into an area, or two, it's based on radius. The further you are from the campus, the greater chances you have a place to stay. And if you obviously get closer and closer, then the thought is you commute or come up with some type of alternative.
So we have we have over 600 beds on campus. Proportionally, that's actually pretty good for a college, because colleges are a little different than universities when it comes to residences. Ours are 100% full, which is actually one of the unique things in the province's system because we reduce the price of residences. So our price for bed for month is about I think it's $550 a month. Most places that you go to residence across the province, it's about $1,200 a month. So they don't fill them because it's too expensive. We can do that because we own them. We give priority to first-year students, and we do, if it does get over, we will look at a radius. So yeah, if somebody was in Belleville in first year and they wanted residence, they probably wouldn't get it. And actually this summer to help tuition is, if you're in semester one this summer, residence is free.
Okay.
Our goal has always been to maximize and fill residences to reduce the impact on the local community.
No, that's appreciated. Just one last question through you, Mayor, is what's the current cost of domestic tuition versus international tuition as it stands right now?
As it stands right now, domestic tuition is about $2,740 a year, and not counting ancillaries, that's tuition. And international tuition is about $7,800, I think, a year.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Your
This
Worship.
semester, sorry.
Mark, thank you for your presentation today. I too have been following what's happening very closely, not only with media, but I have a number of friends and work colleagues who are current and former employees of the college. You talked about, in your presentation, about 1,000 to 1,500 international students is the reduction that you expect. What would your total population look like, domestic students and foreign exchange students, in the event that that reduction occurs?
So we're projecting the fall enrollment somewhere just under 400 students for the fall, which is about, like I say, about 1,500 less than normal. Like I say, we're just under 50-50 proportionally. So when you talk 4,200 students, there'd be 2,200 domestic and 2,000 international roughly, typically.
Yep. And given that you have 600 residents available and priorities given to first-year students, so thank you for that clarification. Will the reduction in the number of international students actually open up opportunities for domestic students?
In what sense?
In being able to attend college and
No.
potentially have a resident be within
There's
residence?
never been a single domestic student that is eligible that has not gotten a seat. Domestic students always get a seat. If they apply to Loyalist College and they meet the requirements of the program, they get in, period. They have never, ever been bumped by an international student.
And you also sort of extrapolated that number into, you're suggesting that there would be a reduction in transit revenue
Yeah.
by about, you mentioned the number $750 to $1 million. Can I ask how you arrived at that number?
So is our finance people give me a bunch of numbers. But yeah, so basically what this is, look, if I got 1,000 or 1,500 students, this is how much a monthly pass costs over 8 months, over a year, and just multiply it all out.
Okay. I
And
did,
it's because international students are heavy riders, more so than domestic students of transit, so we are making the assumption that the vast majority, if not all of those students, would have had a monthly transit pass.
okay. So, and the reason for my question is Chair of the Transit Committee for here for the city. We've been monitoring it quite closely before, during, and we expect after. We were having difficulties reconciling the number.
Yeah, so I think, I'd have to go look on the website, because on the website it posts what the monthly rate is for a student pass.
65?
So you times it by 1,000 or 1,500, and then you times it by 8 months or 12 months, because they
Okay.
run them all year long.
Okay, and for many of those international students, they're here 12 months of the
Yeah,
year.
they are.
They stay for employment over the summer.
They do. They don't tend to leave, no.
Tend to leave, exactly. But my next question really more so, and I want to go back to the number of residents. We talk about housing for our international students. Something that I hear frequently from the international students is the really, I want to be careful with the wording. The crowded and therefore oftentimes unsafe conditions that, and the expense that they incur to try and maintain housing. So we know it's not uncommon for housing here in the city to have 10, 12, 14 more students residing in one single-family home. And hence the unsafe part is we have no way to monitor whether or not they meet fire regulations and such. Recognizing that this reduction in the number of international students might relieve some of that pressure, do you have any thoughts about housing again for domestic students, and any thoughts about the benefits that might occur for the international students that continue?
I don't think it'll change at all, because we have more housing options. Like, we have people calling the college every fall saying, I have housing, I have space in my basement, I have space in a spare room for housing for students. So if and when we ever hear about situations like you're talking about, we actually will go and try to pull those students out of that place and actually place them in other places that we have options within the city to place them. So we've done that over the years. When we hear about it, challenge is a lot of times we hear rumors, we don't get an address. And then the other thing is, it's cheaper when people live a lot more into a space, right? And so people make decisions based on price points as well. But we've worked really, really hard to try to not impact the housing market to the degree that many, many other cities have impacted it. Like, most people don't realize that every September, not anymore, we used to, we'd have 50 50 hotel rooms at the Holiday Inn Express, because we put up every student that didn't have a house in that room until we could actually find them a proper place to live. There was only 1 year that it took us more than 3 days to find them housing. So to say that I'm going to lose 1,500, does it make more options for domestic? I don't think so, because we have a housing officer whose job is to work in the community, and she will tell me that there's more space than we have students.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Sue?
Through your worship, thank you. Through our colleagues, all my questions answered, but I still would like to thank you for you to be here and share the situation you have there. And I'll be supportive along with my colleagues. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We'll end with Councillor Miller and
Thank you, Chair, through you, and thank you, Mark, for the presentation. It's tragic, really, and a real step backwards, I think, what's happening. I know a lot of professors and teachers that are now without a job, and students as well, so what you're doing to be an advocate for the college is spectacular. Councillor Carr asked about the construction course being cut. And at the beginning, I think you said that the reason this was implemented was because of housing and the healthcare crisis we have. Were there any PSW and nursing kind of healthcare courses cut as well through this?
No, all of our applied healthcare programs are very strong right now, and so they're all still up and running.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, having said that, everybody spoke on this. I know somebody wants to make a motion. I think would best to send this back to staff and have a motion put on our next council meeting, if I can get that. So, resolution to send to staff to have motion supporting the Loyalist College at the next council meeting. Moved by Councillor Thompson, Councillor Chatton. All in favor, carried. Thank you, Mark. And we'll have something next meeting for you to pass.
All right, thank you
Or
very
for
much.
us to pass.
Yes.
Okay,
thank
thanks.
you.
Okay, with that, we need a motion to go into committee of the whole at 4:36 p.m. with Councillor Chatton in the chair, moved by Councillor Sue, second by Councillor Millette. All in favor, carried.
Okay, on to 8A, reports. The agenda shall include reports, under reports, items that warrant individual attention from council. Beginning with 8A1, the resolution reads that pursuant to the Manager of Realty and Property Services, report number MRPS-2025-01, management be directed to complete the license renewal process with Hydro One for the recreational trail in the attached renewal documents in favor of the City of Belleville, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the required documentation on behalf of the city. Could I get a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Thompson and Councillor Kelly. Any questions? All in favor? That is carried. 8A2, the next resolution reads that pursuant to the Manager of Economic Development Report number ECDEV 2025-03, City Council declares Canada Day 2025 a municipally significant event, and that all applicable fees identified under business licenses and building permits established under the rates and fees bylaw be waived. May I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Millette, and seconded by Councillor Sue. All, any questions, comments? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 8A3, the resolution reads that pursuant to the City Clerk's report number CC 2025-04 regarding vote method for 2026 municipal and school board election, the use of the alternative voting methods, internet and telephone voting, that do not require electors to attend a voting place in order to vote, internet and telephone voting, or the use of the alternative voting methods, internet and telephone voting, that do not require electors to attend a voting place in order to vote, along with the use of paper ballots and tabulators at voter assistance centers prior to vote day, internet and telephone with paper ballots and tabulator at advance vote. Be approved by council for 2026 municipal and school board elections, and that the appropriate bylaw be brought forward for council's consideration. A mover and a seconder, Mayor Ellis.
I'd move the second one with paper ballot, if I
Could I
could
get a seconder first? Sorry. Councillor Thompson, thank you. Go ahead.
I'll speak last.
Oh, okay. Any speakers on this one? Councillor Millette?
Thank you, and I know the mayor ran on this last time around and promised that he would introduce paper ballots and continue paper ballots. I can't support paper ballots because sorry about that, Your Worship. I'm parting ways with you on this one because as we can see from the numbers provided by the clerk, in the 2022 election, we had a higher voter turnout, and that's the, I should note that that's the, very shortly after the October 1st lifting of COVID restrictions, we still had more votes registered without the use of paper ballots and voter assistance. We used internet and telephone voting with some help at voter assistance centers. That's 4.8%. I know that there are a sizable number of seniors and those in our community who aren't comfortable with online voting in any means. Some don't trust telephone voting. I think the day of paper ballots and the expense and the confusion or the just the clunky old method that it is has long passed, and I'm going to support, I won't support option 2. I will support option 1 with 0 paper ballots. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Councillor Thompson?
I'm going to support the motion. Unfortunately, I might be in that seniors group, and I'm the old method yet. I think it's important that we maintain. I realize some of the figures coming out support internet voting and telephone, but there's still that degree out there, and I'm referring back to the provincial election. Even though they had a good turnout, there was no advance polls for people to go and vote. They either had to go to the main spot the day of or a couple of days before. And if we're going to do paper ballots, I would definitely like to see more stations with paper ballots available. We don't have to have one in every corner, but we have to make them available to the public. So I definitely going to support staying with the old method for the old people. Thank you.
So just to make note of that, that's option 2?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Councillor Enright Miller, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say too, although the numbers certainly are in favor of option 1 with the internet voting, I too think option 2 is our better option. From using Councillor Millet's number, I think it behooves us to include all of the seniors that are in our, we have a large population of seniors, and that may be their only method of voting, and although it is a little more costly, I think we owe that to our citizens. So I would be going with option 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sue?
I would support option 1 because I just would like to make a comment on internet telephone voting. I attended the over 50 plus computer tech classes at the Quinn Sports and Wellness Center. I was so surprised many mature adults are eager to learn computer skills and to stay connected with the family and friends. As some may find the new technology overwhelming, including myself. But with right guidance, step-by-step tutorials, and we can become quite proficient. So I have 2 suggestions, perhaps. Make sure there is a clearly labeled practice booth set up at each voting station with someone to show people that need to be shown. And second would be perhaps as the city of Belleville through library and Quinn Sport Wellness Center offer tutorial classes a couple of months prior to the voting day. So maybe that would be nice if we could provide, but I would support option 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brown? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to support the addition of the paper ballots motion, unfortunately. I'm one of those old people. Let's call a spade, and the last election, being able to do it electronically meant that we could do it more quickly, but we could also do it at our time, as opposed to when the visitor assistance centers were open. In terms of those, I recognize in long-term care, we have in the past been able to facilitate those in residence, in seniors' residence, and in long-term care. whether it be with paper or with an iPad. We were able to accommodate them, and I think the city has been very successful in being able to accommodate those with disabilities, those in residence or in long-term care. We need to acknowledge that we are a technology-driven community these days. And if we want to encourage more young people to vote, then we have to be seen as moving forward with the times and recognizing that the young people are the biggest gap that we have in terms of encouraging voting. So at this point, I would prefer to remain with what we proved was very successful in our last election and resulted in very quick results at the end of the voting day. Thank you.
Just sorry, to be clear, that would be option 1? Okay, thank you. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Kelly?
Thank you, through you, Chair. So I like going back and doing a little old school. You know, we had, if you look at the report, not even 40%, well, 39.6% in 2022 for the city of Belleville that actually voted. And that's down from 2018. And do we not want to be an inclusive community and have all those options for everybody? We got the report from Doug Irwin, city clerk, saying might be an additional 50,000. And, you know, do we want to be an inclusive community? We just elected a provincial government, and there was some confusing areas in voting for in the provincial election. But we elected a government with 44% of the people voting. That's not good enough. 39.6 last time in 2022 for the city of Belleville. That was one of the best for municipal numbers across the province. I'm going to support bringing back the paper ballots. I actually live in a community with a demographic, aging demographic, and over this past weekend and the last few weeks, knowing that this was coming up, had conversations, and they love going to the Maranatha Church and voting because it's a sense of community for them. And that has been taken away from them. And we have to be more inclusive. Only 39.6% of the city voted in 2022 at the municipal level. That's not good enough. So let's give them more options. And there is something to be said for going in and casting your vote. We did it at the provincial level, and you go in behind your little box and you put your X wherever you want to. There's something to be said for that. There really is. And I can appreciate Councillor Millette being the Green Task Force chair going against this. But Mayor Ellis ran on this. And by 2026, I want him to be successful on one of his campaign promises. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Carr, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to, well, I'm going to pose this question actually to the CAO because he was city clerk and ran the last election. How did the internet voting go for long-term care or retirement residents and things of that nature, just anecdotally in terms of ability to have that completed? Through you, Madam Chair.
Through the chair to Councillor Carr, testing my memory, I can tell you that we're obliged to provide voting opportunities in those classified properties. Anecdotally, it's a challenge. It doesn't matter what the voting method is. The reality is voting is low, turnout is low in those homes. There is a certain percentage of the residents in those homes who are able to
Sorry, if I can interrupt, you're suggesting more on the long-term care side, because I've highlighted through you, Madam Chair, two categories, long-term care and retirement residents.
We only have to, municipalities must attend prescribed classification homes. So we go to long-term care. do not attend all. So there, just to clean up any misperception, municipalities do not have to go to all retirement homes. So we go to Hastings Manor, for instance, we go to Quinn Gardens, we go to that type of residence where there are where the residents are unable to, it's long-term care. It's not a retirement residence, right? So McQuigg Lodge, Quinn Gardens, Hastings Manor, that type of residence, like, it's where the residents are unable to, on their own, leave the residence, go to a voting location and cast a ballot without assistance. The uptake is low. We are very accommodating when we send voting teams to those locations. I would suggest that in a polling location, traditional polling location, we would not allow that level of assistance to allow a resident to vote. It's still minuscule, the turnout and the voting in those locations. So just for clarification, it's low, but it's not all of the ones, it's not all retirement homes.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. And then my next question is through to the current city clerk, just in terms of option 2's on the table. So that's internet and telephone with paper ballots and tabulators at the advance vote. And so I was wondering if you could describe whether, in addition to the paper ballots at the advance vote, that there would be tabulators and assistance similar to what occurred last election, where folks that could go there and vote electronically would have that assistance. So is the intent then with this to have both options? Because there will be some who, residents who may not feel comfortable with electronics at home, but may require some guidance, which is what we did last election. And then there may be some that want to show up and just simply use the paper ballot independently.
Clerk Irwin, please.
Through the chair to Councillor Carr, the intent is that voter access centers would have both. So there would be the opportunity for an electronic vote, probably through a tablet, as well as paper ballot with tabulators. So the individuals attending would have their choice on which to do. It just would not be on vote day. There'd be no paper on vote day.
Okay, and if I could, through you, Madam Chair, then if the intent is to go with the paper ballot in advance, would then the city and the clerk who would ultimately be responsible for operating the election ensure there's appropriate advertising so that voters don't show up on voting day at a polling station with the assumption that they can go and cast a paper ballot?
Through the chair, yes, the city will undertake its best efforts. Unfortunately, even in best efforts, some individuals will show up not realizing that. I understand in 2022, individuals showed up at the voter access centers thinking they would have paper, and they did not.
Okay, so Madam Chair, so then ultimately, if that happens in those occasions, then simply there's a tabulator, or there's a electronic equipment there, and people that can help carry out that voting. So, okay, thank you.
Can we have a recorded vote, please?
Certainly, but can we hear from Mayor Ellis first?
Yep,
Thank
okay,
you.
so I just want to clarify to the newly minted clerk. So you said people in the last election showed up for a paper ballot and were turned away? Do you know of how many people that were turned away, or did they vote, or I guess it's unfair to you but you know people showed up for a paper ballot?
Through the chair, people showed up expecting a paper ballot. They were not turned away. The tabulators were behind the screens, and if they asked for assistance, they would have received it.
Okay, so you don't know if they got turned away. So anyways, price on an election. I don't think that we can consider a cost of election to be too much or too less for the 7 principles we have here. And the number 1 principle that is listed is the secrecy and confidentiality of the voting process is paramount. When I look at what other cities are doing, and even the province of Alberta are going back to all paper ballots. There is a distrust, and I'm not saying that I don't distrust the system that is now, but there are many people out there that I ran into in the last election that weren't going to vote. and it was sad. There were mostly senior people that didn't trust phones, that don't trust computers, and that have been scammed. And there's many scams that happen on the internet. And if you go back to our last police board meeting, there was scams on Bitcoin that are talked about, and seniors are, billions and billions of dollars are being scammed yearly. And this is another reason for seniors not, and people that, not so much seniors, that want to vote in person. So for secrecy and confidentiality, I think by having a paper ballot and giving that person the option of knowing their ballot is cast for the right person, speaks to number one. Number three, the election should be accessible to all voters. Well, if you're paranoid, or if you have no trust in communications or internet, or the answering of problems that you face when you're voting, or vote wrong because you press the wrong button on a phone, that this is accessible to all ballots. The ballot can be changed and can be supported and signed off by the clerk or the returning officer at the actual election. I don't know number-wise here. The numbers I have on this report, it said in 2018 we were 42.9%. In 2022 we had 39.6%. So actually, by getting rid of the paper ballot, if I'm correct, if this is what the report reads, Director Irvin, I'll ask you that, is we were down 3.3% the last election. Is that what I read in the report?
Through the chair, the overall turnout was down, the population increased
Yes.
between 2018 and 2022.
But the percentage was down 3.3. So
percentage
we
was
offered
down.
supposedly more, we took away a way to vote. We had more people come in, but our percentages were 39.6. Is that what I'm reading? Do you want to call me a point of order, sir, on that?
No, I'm listening.
Okay, so is there something wrong with that?
I would argue.
Hang on, just a minute.
I would argue.
Okay, sorry, I'll.
Can we just
Yep.
finish with?
So anyways,
Mayor?
if I'm reading the report correct, we were down 3.3%. Okay, that's fact. Okay, I knocked on doors, and I covered 90% of the city, and number one issue was having to not have a paper ballot. People are used to a paper ballot. My dad fought in World War II. We had veterans fought for our way to vote. We need to make it as easy as possible to vote, in my opinion, and we need to give as many instances of people being able to vote. So this is why I bring this forward. I think we're doing a disservice by not putting the paper ballot and eliminating it like last council did overnight. When you look at the numbers, when you report that you sent out today on email, that I believe that was over 70% of the people the year before did paper ballot. It was switched over, but I think it was too much to ask for, and I think we need to do like a lot of municipalities. And I believe the city of Tweed, when they offered all of it last election, they went up by 2%. Thank you.
Councillor Millette, did you?
I
Oh,
didn't speak
sorry, Mayor
last time.
Ellis.
I
Can,
take the right to speak again? Okay.
no? Nothing? No,
Well, you're
you're,
allowed, but I'll just speak again.
you're allowed. It's just
Well, you're
that
not allowed to call you
Mayor
from
Ellis
order.
may have the last say. Can
I
you
don't want to
hit
be,
your, wait,
I don't want to
wait.
be out of order.
Can you hit your microphone? Thank you, Mayor Ellis.
I don't want to be out of order. I just wanted to make a point because it's being underscored that the 2018 numbers were higher than 2022. Two reasons. Our population increased. A lot of those people were from outside the city, unfamiliar with the election, the people in it. The other thing is, on October 1st of that year, not 1 month, a little more than a month out, the COVID restrictions were lifted in 2022. People weren't comfortable turning out to the polls. So those are all different factors. But I find it insulting to suggest that people are so feeble in this community that they can't understand telephone or internet voting because they're a certain age. We have people around this table who are very well versed with these things that they call computers, and we're over 65 years old. We're officially senior citizens. So I find it insulting that we're using this, fact that we've got an aging so-called feeble population who can't understand how to work telephone or an internet voting.
I'll speak last now and we'll call the vote. I think
Yes, go ahead.
to my rebuttal on that is it's not so much seniors, it's everybody. There are people of every age that do not want to vote on a computer. And if you can find me somebody, I can find you two more that won't want to do it. But having said that, the vote percentage was down. I think we need to offer as much as possible. Call the vote. Thank you.
So
Oh, and
just to,
there was a federal election during COVID, and it was successful.
thank you, Mayor. Just to be clear, the way that I had read the resolution, it gave both of the methods, but because we have asked for a recorded vote, we're going to be doing the recorded vote on the second part as it will be indicative of whether it passes or fails. Okay, so I'll just reread that if I may, and if that could be friendly amended.
Just point of clarification.
Yes, certainly.
Madam Chair. The original motion was to support, that was the mayor's motion, I believe, to support option
B.
2.
Two, yeah, the use of.
So it's a yes or no on option 2.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted everybody to be clear what you're voting for. So I'll reread it again. That pursuant to the city clerk's report number CC 2025-04 regarding the vote method for 2026 municipal and school board election, the use of the alternative voting methods, internet and telephone voting that do not require electors to attend a voting place in order to vote, along with the use of paper ballots and tabulators at voter assistance centers prior to vote day, internet and telephone with paper ballots and tabulators at advance vote, be approved by council for the 2026 municipal and school board elections, and that the appropriate bylaw be brought forward for council's consideration. It has been asked for a recorded vote, so I'll hand this off to our clerk, Irwin, please.
Councillor Enright Miller?
Just so I'm clear, it's option 2 we are voting for, correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
My vote is yes.
Councillor Kelly?
I want an inclusive election. I'm supporting number 2.
Councillor Millette?
No.
Councillor Sue?
No.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes, and I don't like the word of senile being used in the council chambers.
Councillor Brown?
No.
Councillor Carr?
Yes.
Councillor Chatton?
Yes.
Mayor Ellis?
Yes.
Carried by 6.
Thank you, folks. Okay, moving on to 8B, consent items. Council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to the consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. I'll go to my right if I could. Councillor Kelly, anything you'd like to pull?
No, thank you.
Councillor Millette?
Yeah, 8B2, please.
Thank you. Mayor Ellis?
No, thank you.
Mayor, Councillor Brown, please.
No, thank you.
Councillor Sue?
No, thank you.
Councillor Enright Miller?
No, thank you.
Councillor Carr
AB2 is pulled.
as well? Okay. And Councillor Thompson?
No, thank you.
With the exception of 8B2, could I have a mover and a seconder to, a mover and a seconder for all of the remaining, Councillor Brown and Councillor Millette? Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Those are all carried. Moving into 8B2, recommendation for the residential intensification project. The resolution reads that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends the following to City Council: that application PL.
Madam Chair, I move that.
Move as written? Lovely,
Yes,
thank you
please.
very
It's
much,
just a
Councillor
little-
Millette, I appreciate you. Seconder, please, Councillor Carr. And discussion, I will start with Councillor Millette as the
Thank you,
mover.
Chair. And this is the motion to amend the official plan to include, and this was discussed at last week's Planning Advisory Committee, and it be amended to the proposed residential intensification project to increase the permitted number of accessory dwelling units to as right of purpose-built 4-unit dwellings. And we discussed this at length at planning. Planning staff have exhaustively researched this. We had public information sessions on it as well. And at last week's planning meeting, I made a point, and I'll make it again today, because I see that our director, Mr. Ashton, is in place. There's been a lot of concern voiced when we purpose-built 4-unit dwellings or accessory units to 4 units as of right, that their parking will become an issue. And Mr. Ashton, if, as you did so ably last week at Planning Advisory, could you remind the public again that we are allowing increased parking as well as part of this plan?
Director Ashton, if you would.
So through the chair, so yes, we are requiring parking for these 4 units. We are also ensuring that the front yards be maintained with the minimum percentage of landscaped open space and promote parking at the rear of the buildings to sort of hide the extra cars to maintain the streetscape and the character of our existing neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Carr?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and that's a great point that Councillor Millette brings up. I'd just like to thank planning staff that got us to this point. It's a lot of work, and they took the time, in addition to the parking concerns, but also into, and we'll work towards some design criteria. One of the other issues that was heard through Planning Advisory Committee was, on feedback, was the type of buildings that may be there, how do they fit into the existing neighborhood? And staff have assured that the committee and now to council that they'll be planning or criteria, design criteria that'll ensure that there's an appropriate blend. Also like to just say thank you to staff for doing that work. When the first round of housing accelerator funds were announced, I was watching them as they were being announced across the country, and the previous federal housing minister was very clear that unless there was 4 units as a right, as an option, municipalities were simply being denied that funding. Since we've made that modification and staff have done the work, we were successful and received the $10.4 million under the Housing Accelerator Fund. So getting us to that point helps with that money. And then as council knows, there's a number of allocations within the budget to spur on some housing. So this is an excellent news story, but at the same time making sure it's done in a controlled way so as not to negatively impact existing neighborhoods. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Carr. Any other speakers on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving into 8B3, appointment of members. Oh, no, sorry.
8C.
Yeah, 8C. Everything else is passed. So 8C1A. I think I need to ask if anybody wants to speak to it, right? If anybody wants to. There is only the 2. So I will need a motion for I'll do A first. Building section month end report, February 2025. Could I get a motion? Thank you, Councillor Enright Miller, and a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Carr. Questions about this one? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And for B, Planning Advisory Committee Secretaries March 4th, 2025 report regarding the public meeting minutes dated February 3rd. Could I get a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Enright Miller and Councillor Brown to second. Any questions or concerns about that one? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And there are no letters or resolutions, none items of interest, just a rise and report. If I could get a motion and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Enright Miller. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chatton. Need a resolution that bylaw number 2025, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42 be read and passed. Moved by Councillor Chatton, seconded by Councillor Millette. Discussion. All in favor? Carried. New business. I have a motion. I need a motion that bylaw number 2025-44 to approve and authorize the execution of an agreement between the Government of Canada and the City of Belleville be read and passed today. Moved by Councillor Chatton and seconded by Councillor Carr. Discussion. All in favor? Carried. New business. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mayor. I got a request for a staff report, and I've got the details outlined here. So I'll provide that to the city clerk after. It'll save him writing. Request for a staff report on matters regarding the Belleville Fire and Emergency Services, and that the report include the following information from the period of March 2020 to March 2025. Outline the number of third pumper responses into the rural area since implementation, including describing subsequent response requirements and identifying any incidents of additional urban response into the rural area and the reasons for the anomalies to the expected level of service. Total annual full-time equivalent frontline firefighters for the urban component. Total annual overtime costs, including the number of callbacks for the urban component, encompassing 2025 year to date as well. Total annual volunteer firefighter numbers by assigned station. Historically identify the highest annual number of volunteer firefighters in the year, as well as the lowest number in year. The duration of vacancy period for the Station 4 commander position. Comprehensive annual recruitment efforts for the rural component, including the number of recruitment drives, detailed description of the hiring criteria, description of advertisements, advertising periods, method of advertising and its duration, number of applications received, including geographical location, number of testing opportunities per recruitment drive, annual number of planned versus actual hires, details regarding geographic hiring considerations for rural response times. Detailed outline of data collection gaps with both the urban and rural fire components, confirmation as to whether urban and volunteer radio transmissions include response reporting and whether recordings are retained, an outline of actions being taken by fire management to close data collection gaps, methods to implement accuracy and implementation date, financial costs to provide data plans for volunteer component to have the means to report accurate reporting for duty and response times. And finally, the last one, and I can't say this boldly enough, for illustration purposes only, and I do not support it, but financial details on the conversion of the entire city to a full-time fire response, including the annual budget amount and tax impacts across the city. And it would be appreciated if that report could come back to council prior to any further reports regarding the station relocation study. Thank you.
Okay, moving along then, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. Back in November 23rd, as I recall, my colleague requested a staff report regarding automated speed enforcement with a number of things that to articulate what the revenue would be, what the numbers of tickets would be, the length of time, and so on. And in response to that, there were a number of questions I believe were posed to Hastings County, in particular to the provincial offenses area, around performance metrics that would allow us to actually prepare that report with some accuracy and really some performance metrics about what we could expect in terms of service levels. On March the 4th, the provincial offenses budget was approved by Hastings County Committee and will go to council on March the 27th. Within that report, and I did watch it live, so thank you both, is that the budget itself included a number of references to automated speed enforcement, but no detail. So for instance, the budget had increases related to the Ministry of Attorney General costs, the other expenses, other not quite clearly defined, but other, that reference the increase due to automated speed enforcement, bank charges and point of sale expenses, computer operations, and staffing, in that they actually increased staff within provincial offenses related to automated speed enforcement. Without the actual performance metrics, without the answers to the questions that I believe the city, and I will look to the clerk, the CAO to confirm it, I don't believe we are in a position to actually be able to support this budget, despite the fact that it was approved by committee. So I would like to request a staff report in terms of going back to the metrics that we asked for, a response from Hastings County, which I believe is pending, as well as in being able to provide the detailed report for council to consider automated speed enforcement. We do get performance metrics from our Joint Processing Center. I don't understand why we aren't able to get the similar kinds of performance metrics from the back-end processing for this. And I guess I'm a little dismayed, is probably the right word, that we actually approved a budget that indicated that automated speed enforcement was the driver of increased costs without an understanding of why those increased costs are actually resulting. So I'd like to request a staff report, if I may, and confirmation from the CIO as to whether or not Hastings County has already responded to our letter.
Okay, Director McDonald.
Through the mayor to Councillor Brown and all of council. So city staff did reach out to Hastings County staff with a significant number of asks related to ASE revenue and seeking information about the POA file in general, how it's processed, the inputs, the administrative costs, and how the function works. I can confirm today we received a letter from Hastings County administrative staff. I will share with you that from my perspective, it does not contain the level of detail that we were seeking, or certainly that council would probably expect to be able to make a decision of that nature, or that from my perspective, city staff provide council through our budgeting process or to finance committee. So what I'm recommending to council and what we've discussed with staff already is that we got it today, and so staff are reviewing it. We've not yet had time to review it as a group. The staff in the city, including finance and operational staff that administer the program here in-house for the city of Belleville, to respond and to work with Hastings County staff to, from my perspective, clarify exactly what we were looking for and what our expectation is on that file, so that we can recommend to council what our potential options are as it relates to ASE and the revenue that we are generating on behalf of the city. We do have options, and I think ultimately it behooves staff to make recommendations to council as to what we do moving forward. There has been significant communication between staff at City of Belleville and Hastings County to this point, but I can tell you again that the correspondence that came to us from Hastings County certainly doesn't have the level of detail that would give us the ability to make a well-informed decision as to how we proceed with continuing administering ASE revenue as we are today versus what we may recommend to council in the future.
Okay, so no more new business announcements. Councillor Enright Miller.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of announcements, if you'll allow me, from two of the committees. I just have an update from the Belleville Police Services Board and the development of our strategic plan. We had two very successful roundtable strategic plan events that took place February 24th and 28th. The board also had the opportunity to ask for feedback from the business community through a chamber breakfast on February 26th. As we have been working our way through the feedback from recent events, there are some remarkable consistencies. One key point is the request for improved communication from the Belleville Police Service to enhance awareness in our community. Another is a strong interest from various groups and agencies in partnership with the Belleville Police Service to improve the health and safety of our community, of which both are top of the list for the Belleville Police Services Board and the service itself. We have two more events scheduled. The first is a town hall taking place at the Belleville Police Station, the Joint Forces Room, on Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025, from 4 to 6, and I welcome any of people listening in our audience, so please attend. The other is a Thurlow Town Hall. Thank you. We'll be out in Thurlow, and it's scheduled for Tuesday, April 8th at 4 to 6 at Jerry Masterson Center. Communications for both will be sent in forms of media and circulation. On the Belleville Police website, if you scroll down to the bottom of the home page, we have placed a photo of the card we are handing out to the public with a QR code on the website, which will take you to the survey that we would encourage everybody to please fill out. There will be additional opportunities to provide feedback. We've had a table at the Quinn Mall this past Saturday, and this coming Saturday, the mayor and I will be at Walmart. No, sorry, just me. And at the Senators game in the evening, and we'll have the surveys to fill out.
I was scheduled to work at Walmart with the cart, so.
I wasn't sure if they told you you and I were scheduled, but no, I'll look after that. We look forward to the unveiling of our strategic plan in the fall of 2025, and we're very appreciative for everyone who has taken the time to contribute to the information, so thank you for that. And my last one is the City of Belleville's Accessibility Advisory Committee is pleased to announce that nominations for the 2025 Accessibility Excellence Awards are now open to the public. The Accessibility Excellence Awards were first developed by the committee in 2023 with a goal of recognizing and highlighting local businesses and individuals who go out of their way to provide an advocate for accessibility provisions and acknowledgement of the AODA compliance that we are all bound by in Belleville. This year's awards will be evaluated through the following categories: built environment, customer service, education, employment, information and communication, and we've added transportation this year. The efforts of those in our community helping to remove barriers and ensure that everyone has the opportunity to fully participate in our community, whether in the workplace or public spaces, and we acknowledge those who go above and beyond to improve accessibility. We not only celebrate their commitment to equality and inclusivity with these awards, but we also want to inspire others to follow suit, fostering a more compassionate and welcoming environment for all. Nominations submitted by public will be accepted until May 8th at 4:30 p.m. Award winners will be announced at a special recognition ceremony on May 27th from 11 till noon in the multipurpose room at the Quinn Sports and Wellness Center, and that will be during National Accessibility Week. ASL interpretation and alternative formats of this nomination form are available by contacting accessibility@belleville.ca. Hard copies will also be available at the Quinn Sports and Wellness Center, Downtown Transit Terminal, and City Hall. For more information and a link to the online form, please visit belleville.ca/accessibility-awards. Thank you.
Councillor Sue?
I had a pleasure to attend the Quinte International Women's Day 2025, and Councillor Thompson was there too with his wife. The event was organized by the Belleville Business and Professional Women's Club and the United Nations Association Quinte Branch. Alternatives for Women. Prince Edward County is dedicated to providing safe and confidential services while working to end the violence against women. 3 women who inspired were honored at the event, including Belleville Deputy Police Chief Sherry Mix, Linda Downey, founder of the Storehouse Food Bank, Prince Edward County, and Emma Bett, artist and initiator of the Bridging Communities Project, also celebrated on Saturday at the ESL with the Sherry Mix. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Other announcements? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, a couple today. I had a chance to attend on Saturday, March the 1st, the Primary Prevention Healthcare Day, hosted by the Belleville Nurse Practitioner-led Clinic, and a day of education, and for unattached patients. So they started at 9 o'clock. They had 35 people come through between 9 and 4 to get something checked out, and you had to qualify by being an unattached patient. So thanks to the team there at Belleville's Nurse Practitioner-led Clinic, making a difference. And I just wanted to say thank you to Mayor Ellis. I reached out to him late last week. We had a meeting with the Southeast Health Unit. Dr. Oglaza, who's the Chief Medical Officer of Health, and also Jan O'Neill, who's the chair of the board, the new board, representing the Southeast area here in Eastern Ontario. And I reached out to the Mayor's office, and I appreciate you getting back to me and coordinating that meeting last Friday. It was really important, and I appreciate the support on that file. Thank you.
Okay, seeing that, I guess we're almost over. I need notice of motions, announcements, confirmatory bylaw, bylaw 2025-43, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting held on March 10th, 25-43, confirmation bylaw, March 10th, 25. Moved by Councillor Chatton, seconded by Councillor Wright Miller. Discussion, all in favor? Carried. And motion to adjourn at 4:26. Councillor Carr, Councillor Thompson, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff, for being here.